Storytime about how I caught my dad watching me while I changed. I think he's trying to gaslight me. I need help. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime, instead of me on Instagram. I'm 17 years old, about to turn 18. My parents got a divorce when I was 13. My mom caught him cheating on her over several times. And one of the times, he even did it at home with some girl he met at a bar. Because of that, my mom told me not to ever trust him. But the way she would say things made me think that there was something else behind everything. After the divorce, my mom got full custody, thank God. This is when my mom told me that I needed to stay away from him. She told me that if I ever found myself alone with him, that I should just call her and tell her to pick me up. When I was 13, I never thought about it twice. After the divorce, my dad started dating a 19-year-old girl. Mind you, he was 46 at the time. When my mom found out, I remember she called him. She told him he was disgusting for dating someone that was 19. But my dad laughed on the phone and hung up on her. My mom didn't even know that I heard the conversation, but she had it on speaker, so I did. He did have rights to visitation though, so he would come over every Saturday and Sunday to visit me. But my mom never left us alone. But my dad has been giving me such weird vibes lately. When I bring it up to him, he says I'm hallucinating and imagining things. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how I caught my dad watching me change. I think he's trying to gaslight me. I need help. Disclaimers is not my storytime, instead of me on Instagram. When I turned 15, I started growing more into my body. My boobula started growing in a little more. This is when I noticed that my dad would look at me a lot more when he would come over to visit me. But like I said, my mom never left us alone. This is also around the time that my dad started asking me if I was interested in boys, and that if I ever let a boy touch me before. But it's the way that he said it. It wasn't like in a fatherly way. It was in a gross, nosy way. As soon as he asked me that, my mom told him to stop talking to me like that. And she answered for me. She said, of course she doesn't let boys touch her. What do you expect? My dad laughed and said, okay, fine. Just making sure. I was completely grossed out by my own father. Ew. When I turned 16, my mom started letting me date, and this boy I really liked actually asked me out. I was really excited. I mean, he said he wanted to meet my mom. He came over on a Saturday and my mom made lunch for us. We had a really great time, but then my dad knocks on the door. By the way, he told us that he wasn't going to be able to come, which is why my mom invited my boyfriend in the first place. As soon as my dad comes in, he started acting jealous. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I caught my dad watching me change. I think he's trying to gaslight me. I need help. Disclaimers and now I storytime with sending me on Instagram. That's when my dad started acting all jealous when he saw my boyfriend. He took my mom into another room and said that I shouldn't have a boyfriend and that I was too young and that he would take advantage of me. But my mom stood her ground. She asked him politely to leave and he did. The following Saturday, my dad comes over to visit again. This time I was in my room changing. My mom told him that I was in my room changing, but she went to the kitchen. Obviously, this is when my dad comes upstairs. The door was slightly open and he could see inside. I was finishing putting on a t-shirt, and when I turned around, there he is looking. I screamed and told him that he scared me, and I told him, why are you watching me change? He said, you're crazy, I wasn't doing that. I said, yes you were, I just saw you. I was so weirded out. After he left, I asked my mom why she never leaves me alone with him. That's when she told me that he was accused of SAing an underage girl. So I told my mom what happened. That's when she said he's never coming back to this house again. Now my dad is gaslighting both me and my mom. He even called me a liar and that I'm making it up. But my mom, of course, believes me. What should we do? Storytime about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimers is not my storytime, instead of me on Instagram. My husband and I had been married for 7 years. 3 years into the marriage, he started sleeping on the couch. We would constantly fight back then because of several things. Number 1, I knew he was cheating on me, but he would never admit to it. Number 2, I wanted to have children, but he didn't want to at the time. Number 3, he never wanted to spend time with me and always prioritized his friends. And this was around the time that he started getting physically violent. Because we'd already been married for a few years at that point, I never saw him as a violent person. It all started by him shoving me one time during an argument. But he shoved me so hard I fell to the ground and ended up bruising my chin. And even though this was a big problem between me and him, it became an even bigger problem between me and my family. As soon as my parents saw the bruise, they started accusing him of beating me. And of course, my first instinct was to defend my husband. My parents begged me to stay with them and I didn't. I went back to my husband and demanded an apology, but he wouldn't even look me in the face. He told me he basically did not care. Once he started sleeping on the couch, it was just like we were roommates. We stayed like this for years. Anytime we got into an argument, he would just look for something to throw throw at me. One day he threw a jewelry box at me and I ended up in the ER. And of course the hospital thought it was my husband. So I lied and said that I tripped. And unfortunately, I went straight back to my husband. Part 2 is story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. After years of him pushing me, shoving me, throwing things at me, and even slapping me, I became so numb to it. It would get me really angry and upset at the moment, but as soon as he would apologize, we would just go back to normal. But even our normal wasn't normal. We didn't sleep in the same bed. He was never really home, and when he was always playing video games. This was also around the time that he lost his job, so for 5 years, I was basically the breadwinner. He told me he didn't want to get a job and he wanted to play video games. I didn't tell him anything because I didn't want it to turn into a fight, but I was angry at the thought that I had to now support him. But like I said, my parents did not like him at all. They knew something was up because I always had some sort of bruise. My parents made it a habit of showing up unannounced to our house. I was actually really grateful to my parents. This didn't upset me at all. But my husband, on the other hand, hated my parents. One day he asked me, why do they even care about you so much? You're not that important. Around a year ago, I started feeling really sick all the time. At the time, I didn't know why. One day, I walk into the kitchen and see my husband holding eye drops in his hand, but he quickly put it away. I asked him why he was holding that, and he said nothing, mind your own business. So I did. A few months later, I'm having a conversation with a coworker, and he told me a story about somebody using eye drops on someone else to make them sick. This is when it all clicked. I had all these weird stomach issues, and I never realized that it was him putting eye drops in my coffee. This is when I decided to file for divorce. Instead of filing for divorce and leaving him, I went home and told him that I was going to get a divorce. He grabbed a hammer and started chasing me. I locked myself in the bathroom. Part 3 is up. Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. When I saw him grab the hammer, I started instantly running. I ran straight to the bathroom and locked myself. The good thing is that he would never damage this house because he does love it, so he didn't swing at the door. I stayed in the bathroom for an hour explaining to him why I wanted to get a divorce. After the 2 hours, I thought he had calmed down. He basically told me that he would give me the divorce with no problem. But let me remind you, I was the breadwinner and he had no job. He was completely dependent on me. But as soon as I opened the door, he pushed in and started hitting me. Unfortunately, I didn't tell anyone in my family what my plan was. Suddenly, I wake up and I realize I'm on the ground. 4 hours had passed. I get up and look at myself in the mirror, and my face was completely swollen. I walk into the living room and my husband was there playing video games, just like he did every day all day. As soon as he sees me, he says, "You better go wash your face." Instead, I grabbed my things and ran out. He didn't even bother chasing me. I called my parents on the way to the hospital and they met me there. Luckily, there was no major damage. My parents helped me file a police report, and when the police showed up to see my husband, he had cleaned the bathroom. Guess what he told them? That he was the one that wanted to divorce me because I was crazy, and that I had made up the whole attack. He says that I must have hit myself in the face. That's when the cops asked him, "How do you know that she was hit in the face?" Gotcha. He said he had assumed that I was being hit in the face. My brothers and parents went over and kicked him out. I sold the place and bought a house down the street for my parents. I am now so much happier. I feel like I'm aging backwards from not being around him. The constant feel and nervousness I felt around him took a toll on me, and I just hadn't realized it. To this day, he says he did nothing, and the cops have done nothing against him. I need proof, so what should I do?